Welcome back. We're continuing our discussion on the alleged plot to sell President-elect Barack Obama's U.S. Senate seat. Joining me now, Chicago insider and former mafia lawyer turned government informer Robert Cooley, author of the also the author of the Almanac of Political Corruption, Kim Long, and the Nation's Christopher Hayes. Gentlemen, before the break, we were looking at what Robert Cooley was telling us there about the current governor of Illinois, Rod Blagojevich, and you were going to say something about that, Chris.
Well, I thought Robert raised a good point about the media's complicity in corruption. I think that was more true back in the 70s, 80s, and even early 90s. I think the Chicago press has gotten a lot more aggressive. The local paper, the Sun-Times, did a long expose on this corrupt program being run by the mayor called the Hired Truck Program. And one of the fascinating parts of the complaint is the fact that Rod Blagojevich was trying to use his leverage as governor, which had some input onto whether the Chicago Cubs would be sold, which is owned by the biggest newspaper in Chicago, the Tribune. And he basically wanted a quid pro quo, saying the Tribune, we won't let you sell the team unless you fire the editorial page writers who've been writing negative stuff about me. He said this in much more profane terms. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting to note is that they didn't play ball, as far as we know. So I think
they didn't fire the writers.
They didn't. And even though they've had a succession of layoffs, all the editorial writers have remained. Now, who knows down the line if the pressure had increased, they would have, but at least they seem to be in the clear on that respect.
I'm going to go to an email that we received here from Raymond Wenbush here in the United States. He writes, "The governor will resign and a special election will be held. I am African American and it's rare that an African American can win statewide. There have only been 3 black U.S. senators since Reconstruction. Jesse Jackson Jr. simply won't win, and we will again be left with an all-white Senate." Do you want to address that, Kim?
Well, it is a very interesting thing to never forget what happened during Reconstruction when there were, I don't know the total number, but there were dozens of black congressmen that came mostly from the South, representing states that didn't want to be represented this way. They were more or less forced to be, in some cases, by federal troops. And once black citizens got the vote, they were. This was the outcome. As the last one left office, there was this huge gap, and we really haven't caught up again yet. And I think that's an issue that you would still see in northern states like Illinois, a vestige of the old Reconstruction era and the racial politics of the time. And that's a whole nother set of corruption and unethical conduct. That's where the Ku Klux Klan got started, in fact, was to intimidate voters and to control elections. And that would start with who was willing to run in the first place, much less who could get elected.
Chris, I just want to get to one issue here that we haven't talked about so far, and that there's been all this speculation in the media here in the United States and probably in other parts of the world as well, on whether this is going to touch President-elect Obama at all.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I think it's important to distinguish between 2 things. The press has been speaking a lot about will there be a taint, right? Which is kind of a meta question about how things will be received, as opposed to the actual substantive question about whether there's any connection.
Right.
In the press conference today, Barack Obama was quite clear that he said, "I am absolutely certain that neither myself nor any representative of my campaign or transition ever expressed any interest in any kind of pay-for-play, quid pro quo, playing ball at all." And in fact, that seems to be backed up by the tape in which Rod Blagojevich curses out the president-elect because he says, quote, "all they want to give me is appreciation." In other words, they're not willing to give him anything for their preferred choice. So I think that, you know, they have to provide an accounting of which staff members talked to the governor about and when that happened and what the discussions entailed. I think once that's done, and if they're actually transparent about it, then they can clear their name, because all indications are so far that they had nothing to do. And let me just add, this is really kind of a bonkers scheme on the part of Blagojevich. I mean, you'd have to be inordinately stupid to go ahead with it. I mean, not just corrupt, but really kind of foolish. And I just don't see that.
If I can interrupt, not if you're from Chicago. If you understood, I'm being very serious. If you understand the Chicago system, and something that I think all you people are not looking at, you recall Tony Rezko. Tony Rezko was involved with Barack Obama and with those people for almost 20 years. Governor Rod, I'm sure, met Tony Rezko through Mr. Obama and his associates. When Mr. Obama, or when Tony Rezko was involved in the case that he got convicted on, some of that bribe money that was going to the governor, some of the money was also going to Mr. Obama or Senator Obama.
There's been no proof of that,
That's
Robert.
not true.
Yeah.
No, yes, there has been proof of that. That was
no.
In the court. In court.
Well, just for the benefit of our viewers, just want to say Tony Rezko was a property developer in Chicago. Is that correct?
No, they used that term to describe him. He was not a property developer. He was involved. What he was doing was he was getting state and he was getting city and government money and state money to develop property, certain properties. He was supposed to develop certain properties to help the poor people there in Chicago. What they were doing was they were getting huge sums of money. They were pocketing sums of money for themselves, and then they were basically letting the properties go to rot. And then they were getting more properties. I mean, he was basically a scam artist. He was not a developer before that. He got involved in that proposition and to make money. But what I'm saying is that it was in court, it came out in some of the documents.
Robert, I'm going to have to interrupt you there because we just have a little time left. We've got about 40 seconds left. I just wanted to respond to what Robert was saying.
Well, look, I mean, the fact of the matter is that he's right insofar as the world of Chicago politics is a very compromised place, and it's incredibly difficult to wend your way through Chicago politics without having interactions with sort of unsavory characters and this kind of pay-for-play ethos. And in the case of Rod Blagojevich, what he was doing was on a sort of a level of extremity that was bizarre and strange. But Robert's right that the general ethos is not at all foreign or strange in Chicago. That's why I think the president-elect does have to give a full accounting of just what the communications were. That said, I think it's incredibly unlikely we're going to see anything that implicates him or his office.
Thank you, Chris. We're going to have to leave it there. You have the last word, and thanks to Robert Cooley and Kim Long as well. And thank you for being with us. On the next show, join us as we discuss the cholera outbreak in Zimbabwe and whether or not Mugabe can hold on to power much longer. From me and the team, see you next time.